So the tools I'm going to need for this next step, I'm going to need some sort of straight edge, whether it's a ruler or anything that has a straight edge. I'm going to need the block that's going to actually create this platter, the size of it, and I'm going to need something to cut the clay. So I could use either this called a fettling knife, or I could use this, which is a modeling tool. I could even use a pencil or a needle tool. I like to use a wooden edge or the fettling knife because it doesn't cut my bag. I start by cutting off any sort of weirdness to get a nice straight edge to start everything. So I'm going to call this weirdness. There's a little bit of a dent here with a little bit of a crease. So I'm going to go ahead and start with this edge here. Now I like to, if possible, put my ruler on the outside edge because when I push down at all, I'm compressing the clay under it. So if possible, I like to put the ruler to the outside of what I'm going to use. I'm going to push down my fettling knife, and I'm trying to put a lot of pressure toward my ruler so that I don't accidentally cut into the part of the clay that I want to keep. Notice how, because down here my hand wasn't there, it went under the ruler. That's how much pressure I'm putting. No big deal. I'll move my hand down. This excess piece, as you know, we don't like to make a ton of clay. So this immediately can go into my good clay bag because I can still use this. This will be for other projects. So I'll set this aside. Next, I want to get the size of my platter. So I'm going to line my block up on this bottom edge, and I could even do something like this. I could set my ruler on the edge so that I have this kind of nice edge that I make sure it's all lined up. And because I'm on the very outside edge, I can go ahead and outline the outside edge of my block. I'm going to try not to push hard down on my block because it's actually on my project. When I go to move my block over, I'm not going to know where it goes unless I very lightly, can you see this? This little L. Just making a little L shape there at the corner. I also like to make that same thing right here at the edge. Let me show you what that looks like. Notice how it's very faint. I'm also going to keep my block the same direction. I'm not going to rotate it. I'm going to leave it the same direction. I'm going to line it up exactly where that was. Make sure I'm staying straight on this bottom edge. And I'm going to repeat. A little L. I'm going to be erasing this, so I don't want to make that very deep or pronounced at all. And I'm going to do it one more time. Now I'm making this 3 blocks wide, so this last time I'll be able to cut this off. So I'm going to go ahead and make an entire line all the way up the edge. And for good measure, make a little mark there. Okay. Because I have this dramatic line drawn in here, I can line my ruler up. I have my ruler on the outside edge of my clay. And I'm going to cut off the outside using that line that I just created. My excess clay, again, it's good clay. It's good clay for the next project. Now, it's awkward for me to reach across and do this up here. I can either move around my desk, or I can also just rotate my desk, or rotate my project on my desk. Same thing, cut off this outer side. I'm going to push down on my clay so it doesn't get crooked. Notice it's not a race. I'm cutting nice and smooth, consistent pressure. Not in a big hurry here. More about consistency. Okay, so what I noticed is I had letters on here and I was keeping that consistent, so I'm going to do the same thing. So that's where my first block was. Now when I move it to the side here, I'm going to make sure that I'm keeping it straight with this edge and keeping it lined up. Because I'm on the inside, I'm making my little L shape, my little line at the bottom. Lining it up, testing 3 edges. Now I've got 1, 2, 3, so my third block means I can make my line all the way up the side. I'm going to extend that little mark over. Now I can cut this off, or just to be safe, what I could also do is go ahead and test this bottom edge and line up and see if it's still making sense. That way. So let's see if it all behaved and if I did it right. Little mark, little mark, little mark. I'm being careful not to rotate my block. Little mark, mark down the side. Ruler on this side, ruler on this side. Doesn't really matter, but again, I prefer to put on the outside edge if I have room, simply because I'm pressing down on it and I don't want to damage my good stuff. Some people would argue and say they'd rather have it on this side because then if they're cutting and they make a mistake, well, now they don't make a mistake and they're good clay. So there's pros and cons to everything we do. I'm going to line up my marks here and cut through. Now the next thing I have to consider is what design do I want to put onto my platter. Some people like to press textures, some people like to draw. What you have to consider though is glaze. Glaze is very thick. So if I was to leave little marks like this, they would completely get covered up by the glaze. When I'm finished with this, what's going to happen is this block is going to go into the center and we're going to flip this over. So one thing people like to also consider is what happens if I only design the area around and I leave this center section clear? Or what happens if I only design a quarter of this space and I design another quarter of this space and I leave this space empty? So think about what kind of design you want to do. If you want to press textures into it, consider the depth of your clay, right? So did you make it 3/8 or a 1/4 inch? I can't push things really deep into here. So if I was to take this tool and press this tool in, well, you can see that'd probably be a little bit too deep and I'd go all the way through. So just different considerations to make. Look around your house, look around your room, look around the class. What kind of textures can you do to make this interesting? So your next step is design.